Okay, Ulysses, we've reached the point in the offseason for the Tampa Bay Rays, at least, where we have our player reviews. And today we're going to spotlight one Randy Arozarena.
And one that, although has really good things to highlight about Randy Arozarena, well, there are other things that might not be so shiny. What about that future with the team? All this and more on today's episode. Let's get started.
You are Locked On Rays, your daily Tampa Bay Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, my name is Kevin Weiss.
I'm Ulises Sambrano.
And we are the host of the Locked On Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making Locked On Rays your everyday. And remember, Locked On Rays is free and available on every single platform, including YouTube at Locked On Rays. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Rays, and email us anytime, lockedonrays@gmail.com. We do and want to do a mailbag episode or episodes later on this week and throughout the offseason, so get those questions in. All right, let's get to our very first player review of the 2022 leading into 2023 season, Randy Arozarena, who just recently was named among the Silver Slugger Award finalist for outfielders in the American League, joining Aaron Judge, you've heard of him, Julio Rodriguez, Kyle Tucker, Mike Trout, George Springer, Taylor Ward, I didn't expect that name to be there, Anthony Santander, Adolis Garcia, and Teoscar Hernandez. So impressive company for Randy.
100%. Like we said at the top, 3 segments: what went right for him, what went wrong, the second one, and of course the future with the team. So this is the first segment. So let's talk about what went right for Randy Arozarena this year. His slash line, a 263 batting average, 327 on base, 445 slug. That's a 773 OPS, a 124 OPS plus. Of course, he was a 2020 season again, 20 home runs, 89 RBI. He got close, man. 32 stolen bases. I liked the fact that he was able to spray the ball more into the center of the field this year. I think that's an improvement for him and his swing. I got to tell you, though, Kevin, the most important thing that Randy Arozarena might have been able to do, given the 2022 season, is stay healthy. 153 games. The dude just posted, man.
One of the few Rays who was able to do that this past season. And it's not like, oh, he's a full-time DH. He has to navigate the wear and tear of the Tropicana Field turf and the hectic travel schedule of the American League East and the West Coast trips and all that goes into that too. And I don't know if you mentioned this, Ulysses. I know you mentioned his overall numbers, but 20 homers, 30 steals, 40 doubles, the 20, 30, 40 mark. No other Ray has reached that in the history of the franchise. So a very, very impressive marker there. I love what you mentioned about his spray chart and hitting the ball up the middle. This is a player that legitimately has power to all fields. If you look at his spray chart on Savant, you see pulled homers, but you see homers straight dead center, and then you see homers launched the other way as well. In fact, he I know he hasn't had a super long career by any means, but he established the Hyatt max exit velocity of his MLB career at 114. And some other good things to keep in mind with him is he lowered his strikeout rate by 4% compared to last year. However, his walk rate did decrease by 2% as well. But Randy, I guess in a nutshell, is a combination of speed, power, some clutch factor, and just brings explosiveness, intensity, and enjoyment among the Rays fan base. In fact, I don't know if we have a ranking of this or this might have to be a larger offseason question, but he's got to be top 3, top 4 of fan favorites.
I got to tell you, when I think of Randy, I think of the D word. Okay, dynamic.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what he brings. And fan favorite, I think before Brett Phillips was gone, maybe then G-Man Choi took that away from him. Randy has to be top 3. I got to tell you, he is beloved, and we actually did this in the June, July era of 2022 baseball for the Rays, and we said, would you take either an aggressive Randy like he is, or never aggressive type of player?
Yeah.
And 95% of Rays listeners, of Locked On Rays listeners, said, nope, stay as is.
Right.
So people do like him, even though it can get on edge sometimes. But I do want to say, you talked about the 20, 30, 40 club, which is impressive because nobody has ever done it in a Rays uniform. But he also became the 25th all time in American League and National League. So it's incredible what he did. And I don't think a lot of people, even Rays fans, really understand, like 25 of all time. They haven't done that. Like this, it was a really good season for him. I mean, he was the second most productive hitter by WRC plus. He was the second most productive hitter for the Rays in F4. By the way, 2.7. So he was scratching the 3 WAR standard there. I got to tell you, it can be frustrating, of course. Some of the stuff that he does do, which we will get to in the second segment. But overall, I think this is a really good season for Randy.
He brings excitement to a team that needs excitement. He brings excitement to a sport that needs excitement. I think that's one way to put it there. And this is a very unscientific exercise that I did here, but I pulled up, I went to the MLB Rays shop, and when you go and try to select, hey, I want to purchase a jersey, it lists the players of like, hey, here's whose jersey you might want to buy. And in order, this is an alphabetical order, obviously, but maybe it lends some insight into which jerseys are most sold among the Rays fan base. It's Kevin Kiermaier, Wander Franco, Tyler Glasnow, Randy Arozarena, and G-Man Choi. And I would say that's a pretty decent crop there of fan favorite-ish players.
Yeah. And you're going to see when G-Man Choi does not make the team for 2023.
Neither does Kiermaier.
And neither does Kiermaier. Then you're going to see a Shane McClanahan pop up on that top 5. That's for sure. But overall, I think we both agree you would take this season, the offensive production from Randy Arozarena anytime. I mean, these are good numbers at the end of the season.
94th percentile in max exit velocity, 86th percentile in sprint speed. BetOnline.net is your number one source for betting football and the start of the new basketball season. You can find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcast, and in-depth analysis on every game. Stu, stop texting me. This isn't the time or the place. Come on. You know better. As always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information, with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every single sport out there. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. So head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet Online, it is where the game starts.
Okay, so we talked about the positives, Kevin.
Yeah.
Are you ready to talk about some negatives of Randy Arozarena's 2022 season?
Sure thing.
Well, I think we all know where we're going with this. It's the running, the base running. The base running went from we talked about BSR during the summer when Randy was getting caught all over the place. 1.5 was his rating last year, which is good. That's not a great, but it's good. This year it rated at negative 4.3. I mean, it just took a dive into like awful base running territory, according to this metric. And again, if that doesn't really speak to you because you're not a BSR PhD holder of this category, then let's use the eye test. There was a lot of ugly base running done by Randy this year. I mean, I think the fandom at times got really frustrated with Randy, and sometimes, I mean, you got to take the aggressiveness for what it is. But we did talk about that in that episode with the BSR and all that there has to be a line of him being aggressive and him just being careless. And you have to draw that line. And we talked about it in the playoffs. Like, it's a problem when nobody's adjusting their swing during those two games. Everybody's just flailing and looking to hit a 3-run home run with nobody on base. It's a problem because are the coaches talking to the players about, hey guys, can you adjust? And them not taking that advice from the coaching staff, because that's a huge problem. The players are not listening to you. And the second part of that is, maybe the coaches are not saying anything to the players and the players keep hacking away. So you've got one or the other. Which problem do you have as a coaching staff? Same thing here with the base running. Are people telling Randy nothing and he keeps doing whatever he wants? Or are they telling Randy, hey, maybe pick your spots a little bit better? And then him saying, no, thanks, I'll do me.
Yeah.
Which problem do you have? Again, because you have one or the other. You can't tell me it's neither, because that's not how it works. You have one problem. Which is it?
And I think I would lean towards him kind of doing his own thing. And hey, I'm Randy Arozarena. I should feel like I have the green light every time I'm on the base pass. And that's an issue. That's a problem. In fact, I did look this up while you were discussing Randy's base running. His BSR, like you mentioned, if you look at the rankings, he is, well, that's, one of the worst in baseball, but he is actually rated as a worse base runner than Yadi Molina.
Yeah. And again, maybe not the opportunities. Yadi doesn't go from first to third, so he goes station to station. Whatever little excuses you want to make, sure. Fine.
40-year-old catcher.
But then again, a 40-year-old catcher.
Yeah.
A dude that is a manager right now in Winter League in Venezuela is rated better in BSR than Randy Arozarena. That cannot happen. And that's not the only gripe I actually have with Randy. My second biggest gripe is the double plays, the grounded into double plays. Do you know how many he had last year?
2021, I would say single digits. Maybe 9, 8.
No, yeah, very good. 9. He had 9. This year, he had 17. 17. He doubled it, man.
Yeah.
And it's not like the number one in double plays was Vladimir Guerrero at 24, but he is very close to being in that top 10. And I went through it, and when you look at all of his double plays, let me back up here. Randy's average exit velocity is 89.9 off his bat. Out of all of his grounded into double plays, only 6 were below his average exit velocity. Okay, so most of the time, it was high exit velos that unfortunately got turned into double plays. Only one was a line out.
Right. Everything
else was on the ground. And that brings me to the other point, a 50.7 ground ball rate. Like, it's a guy with, again, he did make them, most of them, he made them one step or less.
Right.
out of those 17. Like he hustles down the line. There were a few that he didn't give it his all, but I mean
Yeah.
you understand that.
BJ Upton then.
Exactly. Yeah. But like most of them, which I liked, is like he always makes it a close call to get at least that call at first base. But that the hitting, the ground ball rate being at 50.7%, that just that's not going to be very helpful when he becomes, like he did this year, basically the power hitter, quote unquote, the guy to carry the offense. Randy Arozarena kind of became the guy to carry the offense, which, by the way, he shouldn't. These numbers are good. They're not great. They're not the scary guy in the lineup. He's a good complementary piece in a very good lineup. But 51% ground ball rate, that's not going to cut it, man.
Yeah. Couple other things too that we can add to the what went wrong file for Randy. Getting into squabbles with teammates a la Yandy Diaz, and I don't know if we ever heard or got to the bottom of what transpired with that. And then
how heated was it? Do we know how heated it was?
Yeah, no idea, honestly. No idea. I just want to know what it's about, quite frankly.
Be nice.
And I guess the sometimes inconsistency month by month, like terrible April, great May, not a good June. But again, you're going to have ebbs and flows over the course of a 162 game, 6-month season. But maybe what stands out the most is his finish to the season and what he did or didn't do in October. The last stretch of the season, he went 2 for 30 with 15 strikeouts, and then a 1 for 9 playoff showing with 5 strikeouts. Not what I would have expected from superhero Randy Arozarena, postseason Randy. He's supposed to be that guy that when the light shine the brightest, he's there. I wouldn't have expected him to dull down like he did. Now, who knows? Maybe he could have been dealing with some sort of nagging injury. We don't know that, but I'm just looking at the numbers in front of me, and they're not where they need to be.
Well, yeah, because we're not his doctor and we can't do that, but we can read the numbers, and the numbers say that in 10 plate appearances, he only had 1 hit. By the way, from memory, I don't even have to look it up. That was an infield hit that he got. It wasn't even like a liner to left field.
Yeah.
It was a hustle infield single, 1 walk and 5 strikeouts, like you said. I mean, I know, small sample size. Everybody can have a bad 2 games, but he didn't have just a bad 2 games, like you said. 2 for his last 30, 2 for his last 32. What was it?
2 for his last 30 with 15 strikeouts.
That and I know we did the math while the season was happening. Doesn't those 30 at bats kind of match the date of when apparently the fight between him and Yandy happened?
Oh yeah, and how bad the Rays finished the season too.
I mean, we could build so many conspiracy theories that we would have a Patreon channel for each of them.
Yeah.
That you can really come up with them. I don't want to dive into that too much because that's just gossipy and baseless. But makes you think, man, because everything that you hear from every team that has ever won the World Series, what's the one thing that a Brian Kenny character, for example, would hate about?
Great clubhouse, the chemistry, everybody was on the same page and getting along. Great best group of guys I've ever been around. Still my lifelong friends today after winning the World Series 30 years ago.
Yes, the Brian Kennys of the world, the people that just look at stat sheets and that's it, and never have been in a room with other players and felt what it's like to hold whatever instrument you are in the sport that you're playing. They think that that's crap. That's nonsense.
And again, I don't know how, and like a cultural thing too. I would think that Randy and Yandy with the Cuban connection that they would be like best buds. And maybe that's also a thing of, hey, we're so close together that we can get into an argument like this and still salvage things, as opposed to say it was Brett Phillips and Randy getting into it.
I think that's a thing of like, maybe you can look at it as like, who wants to be, you know, the best of that country in that team? Who want, you know, if you think of a Cuban player, is it going to be? Is it Randy or is it Yandy? But I also like to think about it, like you said too, like the people that are close are usually going to be rubbing off the most. Like you're going to fight the most with your brother and your sister and all that. So it has an inkling that maybe that's what happened. You know, maybe the closest two guys of the team got into a little bit of a tiff, and you hear about tiffs and all that all the time in clubhouses, and sometimes you don't hear about it for years, and they still happen. So it makes you wonder, and I hate it because those are two of the most, you know, fan favorite players that we've had in a long time, in Randy and Yandy. And for them to get in a tiff like that became public, and then I think I like that, the fact that we don't really know more about it, because it's kind of like them saying we're not saying anything. Maybe that's kind of cool.
And quite frankly, if it was something, if that exact instance happened, but with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'm sure we would know more about it, just based on the coverage level of those two franchises at the moment. All right, let's move along here. Randy's future with the team.
Oh boy.
Here could be a little bit of a wrinkle. He could be Super 2 arbitration eligible and get roughly $4 million this upcoming year rather than $725K. And it's been floated around by Topkin and I suppose some others that maybe the Rays try to maximize their value from Randy at this juncture.
Yeah, and I feel like we've talked about it, it seems when Topkin says something like that, it's been fed down through the front office. Like, hey, can you put that out there for me? Thanks. And basically, that doesn't mean that they're going to.
He's the pawn of the Rays, more or less.
Whatever adjective you want to use. I feel like
you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
Exactly. Except they never scratch Mark's, because he never has the premiere on anything, basically. I think he had one premiere this season, but I forget which one it was.
Oh, the big, you're referring to kind of that was a great scoop. He's no scoops. Yeah, the lack of scoops is, I guess.
If you're going to scratch my back, like he's like, I got to get the scoops, but he really kind of doesn't. Anyway, regardless, this is not a review of Mark Topkin. It's a review of Randy Arozarena. He has put it out there, I feel like, just so other teams know that if they call, their Rays front office is not going to hang up if they ask for Randy Arozarena. That's basically why that's out there. If they want, they'll listen, and they've always been like this. They always listen. They're never going to just shut it down. We've done the episode of like how many untradeable players do the Rays have, and it's usually like 2 or 3. That's about it. Like, I know fans are like 10, you know, it's 2 at the most, you know. I don't think he gets traded. I really don't. And I see the fact, the sprint speed, it's gone from the 90th percentile to the 86th percentile. The ground ball rate went up the wazoo. The double plays went up the wazoo. The base running tanked. The walk rate, it dipped 2%, like you said. I just don't think there's still plenty of time for them to sell or trade, rather, Randy. I don't think this is the time. And I don't think this is the time because look at your offense. He is the second most productive offensive player you had this whole season. If you trade him, where are you going to get all of that offense from? You're not going to get the Brantley and Jock Peterson and Jose Abreu, and they're all going to be fantastic players. And Brendan Lau is going to come in and he's going to hit 40 bombs. Like, let's not live in fantasy land. This guy has shown that he posts. This guy has shown that he is stable at the end of the year. He's going to give you a 2020 season. Like,
Right.
do you need more proof than that? That this guy is stable. He is constant. Ultimately, at the end of the season, his numbers are going to look pretty much the same. And that's been the case. I don't think this guy should be traded at all.
Question. Could this not have to do with, okay, we're just trying to save a couple bucks here and there, but maybe it is a clubhouse chemistry culture thing of we talk about the gaffes and the chaos on the base pass. Is he legitimately not listening to his coaches? Is he legitimately doing things on his own? Again, I don't know how big of a thing it is, or if it's a thing, or if it is or isn't a thing, but he's also gotten into quasi collisions with the center fielder, Kevin Kiermaier, at times over who has this fly ball. I know there's been some things in the outfield that have happened, but and then
it happened to Harrison Bader and Aaron Judge too. Yeah. So it's not only Randy.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
Maybe we don't know. But if it's a chemistry thing and they want to trade him for that, then you can't really do anything about it. I mean,
right.
And if it's about that, Kev, then you're not going to get your value because that stuff gets around. Yeah. People in baseball know that stuff. Like, the Kansas City Royals know about that stuff.
Yeah,
so if they call, we're not going to give you what you want because you want to get rid of him.
Right. It's like, it's one of those things of like, hey, we're fielding calls for rain. It's like, okay, what's the catch here? There's something going on. And it's really, I think, the next frontier. It's already been established, so to speak, is not just looking at the analytics and the stat sheet, but the mental makeup of a guy and how he's going to fit in a clubhouse. I don't even know if there's an algorithm that can come up with that or for that. But I think that's something that teams are paying much more attention to nowadays, especially as, you go so far strong to the analytical side and you forget that, hey, these are people too, and they have to get along and they have to coexist for the better part of 6-7 months, whatever it may be, and all the cultural issues as well. But let me put this out.
Do you think he gets traded?
I think he gets traded eventually.
This offseason?
That's tough. I'm going to say not this offseason, but I could possibly see a scenario where he's traded at the deadline, depending on how things go. We also need to note that he is represented by Scott Boras. That's also something to keep in mind too. But let me throw this out there. Do you think, we look at the line of Randy. We talked about the 20 homers, 30 plus steals, 40 plus doubles. I give you all those numbers, all those metrics. Is it a little bit surprising to you that his B WAR was 2.8 and F WAR was 2.7? I mean, something that has rarely happened in the history of baseball, and yet he doesn't have a 4 WAR or a 4.2 WAR.
It's the negatives, man. I think it's the base running. The base running just at least for Fangraphs, it just drove him so much down. It was bad. It was really, really bad.
Right.
It was bad. And he wasn't the only guy that was doing those base running gaffes, but 12 caught stealings too, by the way.
Yeah.
Most in the league. The base running, the stealing was bad.
All right. I guess we forgot to mention this at the top, but should we go ahead and start giving player grades as well?
Let's do it. Get your red pen ready. I believe we graded him at like an A last year, like a 95, 94-ish, 97, 96, something like that. He took a dive for me.
Okay.
He now resides in the A- column for me. He's at a 90. He barely made the A, but I had to knock him down because of the negatives that we spoke about. Not quite. I can't give him a B+ because he was the guy.
Yeah.
I mean, so 90. He makes the cut into the A group, but barely 90. A-.
Yeah, it seemed like we focused on the negatives for quite a portion of this episode, but despite all of that, I will also give him an A-, but I'll give him an 89.5, so it rounds up to 90. So that's his grade. So now if he does what he does again next season, I don't know, maybe I drop him down to a B+. We'll see. There's some things that absolutely have to be improved going forward. But he is, of course, in and entering the prime of his career, 27 years old in 8 months. This is really where he should be cashing in literally and figuratively as well. All right, so that's our first player review in the books. Next up on Wednesday's episode, we have Shane McClanahan to review. In the meantime, thank you for making the Locked On Rays podcast your very first listen every day. Now make your second listen the Locked On Today podcast. That is also free and available on all platforms. So a wonderful day. Stay safe, and we will talk to you tomorrow.